Um, just, I guess, one step after the next. I don't know that I really chose to say, hey, I want to do this. I was interested in psychology. The way I talk to students today is I've become a professional people watcher. So I was just interested in how, at the time that I switched into psychology as a major, how we create our sense of self.
Okay. What educational program or major is recommended as preparation?
Definitely a psychology major as an undergraduate, and then you apply to grad school and you go from there. So I've got my Bachelor of Science degree from Michigan State. I have my Master's of Science from Ohio State, and I got my doctorate, my PhD in psychology from Ohio State as well. So I was in school for about 11 years.
Yeah.
Long time.
That's what I'm planning for too. I know it. What are your job responsibilities?
What isn't my job responsibility? When you're a professor, there's kind of three legs to your job, or three different areas in your job. You have research, teaching, and service. And so within each of those different areas, there's a tremendous amount of different types of responsibilities that we have to keep track of. We get our jobs at a university based on our research interests. And so my area is looking at family dynamics and its relationship to pro-social behavior and moral development. And so when I interviewed at this job, 17 years ago, can't believe it's been that long, they were looking for someone in adolescent psychology, which is also my area, my age group of interest, who was studying social developmental issues. And so I fit the niche that they were looking for, okay? So within that, then, I'm responsible for creating and developing research questions, finding a methodology to study those particular research questions. I'm implementing the research study, presenting it at national conferences, and then writing it out for publication. And that's one of the legs of my job. In addition to that, I also have typically anywhere from 2 to 4 students working in my lab to help me out conduct that particular research. Okay, so that's one of my jobs. The other one is teaching. So you've had me in intro psych. So one of those is, of course, is preparing lectures, creating exams, grading exams, creating homework assignments, grading homework assignments. I'm very much an advocate for student writing. So as much as writing can be painful, I think it's important that you do it as students. I mean, you don't become a better writer unless you write, period. And so I think it's important as well as students learn and understand APA style and how to write up a research paper and a literature review. So those are kind of the assignments that I attend to. I'm also very conscientious of what students learn and how they learn. Conscientious about keeping my lectures up to date. So, putting in several hours in preparation each week to make sure things are in place. Lecturing, obviously, working on teaching techniques like how to generate and create a discussion. I also have to keep up in my field, in developmental psychology, which is where teaching and research kind of combine, to make sure that I'm up to date with the information that I'm presenting you guys, so that it all kind of comes together. So that's another, teaching and learning is another part. And of course, I was just sitting here working with some students on how to do study skills. I've worked with students on how to take a test. I've worked with students on how to engage in time management. I've worked with students on how to learn more of psychology, how better to understand it. So I'm also in the role of tutoring. Another area of teaching, it kind of spans between teaching and services. I'm also the chief academic advisor for the department. So I also help students develop their course curriculum. What do they want to do through college? What courses do they need to take? When do they need to take them? What are their prerequisites, what do they need to do to get into graduate school, what do they need to do to develop a career, how do they find a career interests. I mean, these are all kind of questions that I go through with students as well. So this piece of service means that I'm doing something to serve the department or serve the college or serve the university. And one of those is the advising piece. But in addition to that, we also serve on committees as faculty members. And so we have to participate in different types of committees. We may get nominated, we may get appointed, we may volunteer. So for example, right now I'm on a job search committee for the department. And so I have to help identify the next faculty member to to teach here. You have people who are on committees at the University Senate, the College Assembly. You have people who help determine the undergraduate curriculum or graduate curriculum. What else have I done? Gosh, I've been on the committees that help to appoint faculty members to the next step. I'm on the curriculum committee here in the department. I'm on the assessment committee here in the department. So I have to do those service activities as well. So there's, like I said, there's 3 pieces to the teaching. In terms of time, I would suggest that teaching takes up about 40 to 50% of my time, and my research takes up about 40%, and then the service is about 10%-ish in terms of how I allocate my time. So I'm working most weekends, typically. I put a probably 8-hour day in on Sunday, and another 4-hour day in on Saturday, and I worked about 10 hours yesterday, and I've been here since 7:45 this morning. So that's a typical work day. And then I'm going to go home, but I've got other faculty who will, go home, eat dinner, and then work another 2 or 3 hours a night. Oh, I forgot about responding to emails too. So as well.
Okay.
Is that more information than what you were expecting?
No, that answered like 2 questions actually.
Okay.
It's okay. If you were hiring a person for a job, what qualifications would you look for?
If I was hiring a person for a job here as a professor,
Mm-hmm.
What I'm looking for is someone who can be a strong, independent researcher, who has ideas about and questions about what they want to study and has a way and methodology to go about doing that. That comes first and foremost. That's what we have to do as faculty members to get tenure and to get, in essence, job security here, is demonstrate that we have the ability to conduct research or engage in scholarly activities. So for example, if you're in English, you have a different type of scholarly activity that you engage in than you do here in psychology, which of course is very different from physics and biology and so on and so forth. So we need to make sure that that individual can do that and that they're a curious individual. And then we also want to make sure that they're going to be a good teacher, a good instructor. Are they interested and engaged in student learning? So those really are the 2 pieces. Can they do those and can they balance those out?
Could you give me a salary range for your occupation?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Based on how many years of experience? What do you want, starting salary?
Starting, like when you first started here.
When I first started here, which was back in 1976, I was hired in at $37,500. I am not quite double that yet now. Faculty members getting hired in now are about between $50,000 and $55,000 annually, and typically on average, we have different levels in professorships. You have the assistant level, you have the associate, and you have the full professor. The assistant professor, it also depends on what your area is, so there's a difference between the humanities and the hard sciences, and where social sciences are somewhere in between. Associate professor, I would say anywhere between about $65,000 to about $75,000 a year, on average. At a university like Oakland University, if you go to a university like University of Michigan, you can probably add $15,000 to $20,000 more. But they're also more research intensive.
Yeah. What do you see as the positives and negatives of your current occupation?
The positives is I have a lot of freedom to choose what I want to do and how I want to do it. I am a curious person, so it's fun to be able to do research, and I love to play with ideas. That's really cool. And to think about the questions. I get paid to think about questions. That's kind of fun, you know?
Yeah.
And then to be able to do the research. I enjoy teaching a lot. There's nothing it's so thrilling when there's a student out there and you see them click and their eyes just sparkle and they lean in and they ask a good question. It's like, cool. Yeah, that was a good day. That's the kind of thing that I really enjoy to do. The downside, grading papers is not real fun. When you have to grade 30 of the same answer, after a while, my mind goes blah. Or and sometimes university politics are very difficult. That makes it not very fun. Everybody has their way of wanting to do things, but that's going to be true at anywhere. Corporate America, academic America, I don't care what it is. Human beings are human beings. That's not very fun. There's a lot of stress because of trying to juggle 3 different areas. Like I said, some weeks I may put in 35 hours. It's usually a week in the summer. Other weeks you may put in 45 to 50. So, and trying to make sure things get done. And interestingly enough, sometimes email makes it difficult because students just want a quick answer, but when you have 20 students wanting a quick answer, it gets kind of heavy sometimes to respond to it. And the expectation that if they email me at 10, I'm going to reply 10:15 at night, then I'm going to reply by 10:30 at night. And if I don't, then did you get my email? It's like, I went to bed at 10. So those things get challenging at times. Yeah.
What are some other occupations that are closely related to yours?
Wow. I really don't know. I mean, teaching in high school, I would think. Training. Some corporations will have people who do training. So that's one area that's a teaching area. The research area, you have a lot of companies who, like in marketing research, would do what I do. There's program evaluation in nonprofit organizations that would tap into the research skills. There's organizations that need people who do research. So there's been developmental psychologists, for example, who's worked for toy companies. There's actually developmental psychologists who do research to help television programming, educational television programming. So Blue's Clues, Dora the Explorer, Diego, right? Those all have personality and cognitive psychologists who are doing research to identify what is the best method of presenting information so that kids actually learn something from those particular videos. You've got, so anything having to do with research would be there. Many people in my field will also go into public policy, be policymakers, because we have the ability to read the research from people who are doing research in the area and figure out what is the best method to apply those skills. I've got a friend of mine in DC who's doing that right now.
What is the employment outlook for your occupation?
This is such a very special niche. It's never really good. Because you have to have a certain level of education, and there's only so many people who get into PhD programs. And then you have to have the job and the advertisement that is looking for your particular area of research. So the job outlook is never great because it is so specialized. I mean, if my husband and I decided to move, we'd have to go to a location in the country where you have a university that's looking for an adolescent social developmental psychologist. That specific. If I was in cognition, it's not gonna work. If I was in personality, that's not gonna work. Or if they're looking for someone in those areas, I shouldn't apply there because they're not looking for my particular area. So it's very niche based, so it's really kind of hard to answer that question.
What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about pursuing your occupation?
Make sure you're a curious person. Make sure you like to read. Develop your writing skills. Develop your statistical and mathematical skills. Make sure you get a GPA at 3.5. And make sure you read classic books or something to increase and improve your vocabulary. Because the thing today that's happening is that students are not reading primary sources, so they're getting textbooks that have been created to have a reading level at about an 11th grade reading level. And when you have to take the GRE exam to be able to get into graduate school, you don't have the vocabulary or the reading comprehension that's required to do well on that test. So if you're not reading those good hard science, those primary sources, you're not going to be prepared.
What types of technology are used and how are they used?
Technology, obviously computers, word processing programs, Excel programs, SPSS, which is a statistical package that we use as a basis for a lot of our research. Some people use video. Some people will use, I've got iClickers, which is for teaching. Obviously VCRs and DVDs and CDs to help teach. But most of it for me is all about computers. If you get into some other areas of research, you've got people who are doing work on fMRIs and MRIs. You've got people who are working using something called an ERP. You see these little baby caps. They look like hair nets, except that they all have electrodes poking out of it, and they can map the brainwave activity of infants. It's just amazing stuff. It's really cool. You've got people, like one of our professors here looks at hormone assays, right, to look at the relationship between certain hormone levels and certain psychological outcomes. Everything. We got someone else, one of our other faculty members are looking at sperm count. So he's got a spermometer, I don't know what it is called, but looks at, reproductivity issues in relation to psychological areas. We've got another faculty member who's doing research on alcohol. So she has to understand how to use equipment with alcohol. So it just really depends on what's your question, right?
Yeah. Okay. And
Did I answer everything and then some?
yeah, you did. What professional organizations would I benefit from joining?
As a young person?
Mm-hmm.
As a psychology major, I'd strongly recommend Psychi, which is our national, honor society. But honestly, anything that's going to help you develop leadership skills, networking skills. I don't know that it matters that there's a particular organization, but more that you do it. There are some undergraduate, depending on your area of research interests, there are some undergraduate organizations for in the APA, American Psychological Association, and sometimes it's actually associated with some scholarship monies through there. Really, I like to see students get volunteer experience, especially if they're thinking about an applied field, an applied area of psychology, just to make sure that it's what they really want to do.
What's an applied area?
Like clinical and counseling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. For me personally, I thought I wanted to help people, as I so often hear students say, and then I volunteered at a psychiatric hospital my senior year of college, and did that once a week for 4 hours a week, and then ultimately was hired to work there. And in doing so, I learned that I didn't have the Teflon skin that I needed to do good clinical work. I was too torn up by the students. Curious about how they got that way. But you saw some of these kids and, oh my gosh, your heart just went out to them. Really tough circumstances, because I worked with teenagers. But they were also very hard to work with, because they had to develop adaptive strategies, and they were very manipulative, sometimes highly aggressive. And the combination of knowing what their background, what led to where they were then, in addition to how they were there, just was hard to deal with. And so it taught me that I shouldn't go into the applying area, not when I was 21 anyways. But getting those experiences are very enlightening. The other thing that I think as a student you need to get involved into is research. I mean, join a lab. Find a lab that you can work with. Find out, is that what you really want to do? Do you really get into like creating questionnaires or creating experiments and running them to see what happens? Because to me, statistics